Hi there, and welcome to the next episode of Have We Thought This Through? This one is all about playing with variety. Now, it could have been called Wrestling with Variety, frankly, because bringing more thoughts into a kind of design and thinking process can be playful, can be delightful, can also be incredibly challenging and complicated. I want to remind you all, because many of you will know this already, but maybe for some it will be a new thing, is the Design Council's double diamond process, which they came up with around 2005. And they kind of distilled it by looking at lots and lots of the ways in which kind of design processes were occurring, and realized there were some really strong commonalities across many different approaches. Roughly speaking, it is this idea of two diamonds. The first diamond is your problem seeking, problem definition diamond, and your second diamond is your solution seeking and solution creation process. And it's this idea that in the beginnings of these diamonds, at the first start, when we're widening out, we're diverging, we're bringing in broader ranges of thoughts for contemplation and consideration. We are looking to really broaden out the palette of possibilities, the set of possibilities. Then we narrow down, we start to use our convergent thinking approaches. We're filtering, we're clustering, we're prioritizing, we're assessing based on viability, we're assessing connected to a strategic aim, whatever it might be. We're narrowing down. And then we go, okay, that's the problem. That's the problem for me. We're going to solve this one. Then we come up into another new diamond. We, again, having with that problem in mind, we're now thinking, well, okay, well, now it's time to think about the solution. But we don't just come up with a solution to a problem. We come up with a multitude of potential solutions to that problem in our diverging process, and then we converge back down onto a specific solution that we're going to enact, that we're going to deliver, or that we're going to try and persuade people is the thing to invest in. Now, it all looks lovely, it looks deceptively linear, it looks like you just go through the steps and beautiful outcomes ahead, but of course that is not real life. Real life is messy, and of course we actually oscillate between all of these different modes much more frequently. So a design process might have loops, way more loops in it than just going through it once. But actually I'd contend that as humans we are probably doing all four of the slopes at the same time. We're imagining new problems even as we are coming down the final slope into our specific solution. We can't help ourselves thinking about solutions right at the beginning of just defining the problem. So I think we're doing all four of those things. And another word for messy, I think, is complicated or complex. And in a way, I think what's really handy about the idea that it's a much more complex process than perhaps the diagram conveys is that we need that complex process in order to deal with the complexity of the world. If we had a very neat process that was shorn of any nuance and complexity, it would likely not meet the task of being able to engage with the world. So on that, I read a book, or actually listened to a book over the summer, Dan Davies, The Unaccountability Machine. Absolutely amazing book. I can thoroughly recommend it. I would go for the audiobook myself. It's a very entertaining kind of reintroduction in my mind, or for some it might be opening up a kind of a new chapter around the cybernetic movement. And this guy here, Stafford Beer, in particular, is one of the big sort of tragedy heroes in the book. And this guy here, Ross Ashby, who was very much at the kind of heart of the kind of cybernetic setting out the stall of the cybernetic philosophy, which I think Stafford Beer then went on to develop. Now, one of the things that Ross Ashby talks about is the law of requisite variety. And in essence, I think what he's getting at is this idea that the system, the organisation, the team that you might be focusing on, it needs to have as much variety in it and the capability to engage with variety as the world that it is trying to connect and engage with. And so if we map that back to the double diamond, it's clear to us that the way in which those teams are assembled to do the design thinking and the tools that we use and the kind of the nimbleness and adaptability of those tools has to match the complexity of the task and the world that it's trying to engage with. And this is a really critical thing around why playing with variety is such an important thing. On the one hand, it's just straightforwardly delightful and lovely, and we should all hopefully try and get away with trying to inject as much variety into our thinking. You remember when you were at school and you had that bit where you get to cut pictures out of a magazine and create a collage, and in a way what you were doing was sort of looking at the world and you were capturing all kinds of ideas and reassembling them in your image. You were sort of processing them and turning them into something new. This is a delightful process, but on the other hand, there's also just a super hard thing about it, which is that you're trying to grapple with complexity. If you're going to come up with any new solution, complexity mustn't be thrown away or overly reduced. It needs to be considered in a kind of reasonably complex fashion itself. We don't want to lose too much information. We don't want to lose too much nuance. So I think there's a whole bunch of things that I want to kind of, I'm going to say, celebrate about this kind of playing with variety. So number one, really obvious, open-minded exploration is a wonderful human way of thinking. The next one is this sort of absorbing and honouring complexity rather than being too quick to try and collapse that down. Now, often that is quite difficult, especially in a kind of working context where organisations are very keen to get to the solution and not massively keen to get caught up in a process that looks overly complex or is chasing its own tail. Nevertheless, that idea of holding the ground on that and thinking about how the nuance can be kept and how the kind of holistic nature of the problem space can be considered is really critical. The next thing is, and the beauty of one of the real upsides of the double diamond is it creates multiple problem statements and multiple potential solutions. And this creates a kind of creative resilience, because although you might have banked on there being this particular one solution that you're going all the way with, you might come to realize very quickly that you actually need to dip back into a slightly different version of that, a different problem or a different solution that the process has already made clear to you. It creates, instead of just a crumbling and a brittleness, you've got places to go, and that's your resilience. And then the last thing is, this is something that I think about a lot with our clients, is how solutions can be nurtured. If solutions are very quickly turned into business as usual, it's often without there being a greater sense of the understanding of what led to those particular solutions, the rationale, the story behind them, the thinking, frankly, behind them. When you do that double diamond approach, when you're playing with variety, you are able to frame and do storytelling around those solutions that makes them much more easy to embed philosophically. It enables teams, other individuals, other connected organisations to understand what that solution is about and what the context of that solution was. So I just really wanted to go on a bit of an exploration about how we can use variety in our thinking. Thank you very much for coming on this one with me, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.